In this video, we're going to discuss setting up your forecast. So in the previous videos, we discussed connecting your account, importing your vendors, setting up your inventory, and now we're going to talk about the forecast. SoStocked is very unique in that it gives you a lot of customization on your forecast, but it can be very simple. When you first look at the screen, it might be overwhelming. I'm going to go through the basic options here, and you can decide if you want to use them or not. So don't get overwhelmed. I also want to just remind you that we offer a one-on-one live onboarding call on Zoom with every new user so we can personally onboard you. This is an overview for people that want to just get started quickly, jump in there, set up their forecast, do their settings, and get going. If you're a beginner or maybe you're getting a little bit overwhelmed, just set up your call and we can walk you through this part. You've already covered the majority of what we need to get you started, and now we're getting into more of the advanced stuff. I want to point out this elephant in the room, which is this big red warning up here. It says that you have to reconcile this FBA shipment. I'm going to make that go away, and we're going to talk about reconciling shipments a little bit later. Just so you know, it doesn't mean there's anything wrong with your FBA shipment. It just means that we need to connect the FBA shipment that you created in Seller Central with a purchase order or work order in SoStocked to reconcile it so our system knows where that inventory came from and when to expect it to arrive at Amazon. That's all it means. Okay, so let's talk about the forecast. The first thing that you'll see is we have a lot of different dashboards, just like we have on every page, and the default dashboard is called Orders by Supplier. What that means is you're looking at the supplier name here that we set up in a previous video and all of the products for that supplier. And what it's doing is it's telling you if you need to place an order for this product based on your current forecast settings, it will have a green button next to it. And if you click that green button, it will actually create a purchase order. If you click the blue button, it will create a transfer, which means moving existing inventory from a warehouse that you set up previously. Or anything that's marked with a check mark here, if I click this button up here, it's going to create one purchase order for all of that inventory with the click of one button. I'm not going to go through the whole purchase order system right now, but I just wanted to show you what you're looking at. Over here we have days until stock out. That's what SO means. And basically that's just taking your adjusted velocity, which is your average daily sales, divided by the amount of inventory you currently have at FBA or coming inbound to FBA, and giving you approximately how many days of inventory you have left at FBA. If it's red, that means we're predicting a stock out either right now or in the future, and you'll get a little exclamation there. And then we got our velocity calculations over here, which we're going to talk about next. Before I dive into how to set up your forecast, there's a couple other things I want to point out, which is the grouping. You can choose to group by supplier, group by warehouse, group by brand, or group by none. We are currently grouped by supplier. And the only filter that we have defaulted is active. So these are all active products by supplier. These ones are not separated by marketplace. So if we scroll down, we'll see we've got different marketplaces in here: Canada, US, Mexico, North America. If you wanted to group it by marketplace, so you wanted to set up forecasting only for a particular marketplace at a time, you could actually add a filter and filter by marketplace. So you could do marketplace is US or marketplace is Canada, apply filters, and it will dramatically shorten the list. You're still looking at it by supplier, but now we're only looking at Canadian products. In this case, we're just going to remove that and look at all active products. There are a lot of different things you can filter by. I'm not going to go into that too deep into this video because I want to keep it overview, getting started. Of course, you can search by name, ASIN, or SKU. And if you have a lot of products, you might want to extend this to look at a larger number of products per page. Okay, let's jump into the forecasting. We're going to use this stainless steel cocktail shaker as our example product. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to click on this velocity number, and you'll see that it gives us a couple of different options on how to calculate our velocity and our future forecast. So what the velocity is looking at is these 7 periods of time from the last 2 days to the last 180 days averaged out. The simplest way to explain this is, in the last 2 days, this product has sold 25 units per day. So this is average sales per day in units. In the last 180 days, it's averaged basically 47 units a day. And these are the averages for each of those periods. What this velocity calculation is doing is it's averaging out all the averages. As you can see here, the total number of units sold in the last 180 days is 214.6 divided by 7 periods is an average adjusted velocity of 30.66. Now, if I didn't want to look back this far, let's say I only wanted to look at the last 30 days, I could simply uncheck those and you'll see that this number recalculates. So I'm only looking at the last 30 days. Let's say this is a seasonal product and I don't care about what happened back then. I'm in the new season, man. This is what's happening now, right? So we'd only want to look at the last 30 days. Maybe you have a highly volatile product and you only want to look at what's happening in the last few days, like maybe retail arbitrage or wholesale, and you're sharing the buy box, for example, and you don't really care about these old numbers. You want to look at right now what's happening. This is real-time data, and of course this number is going to reset a lot more frequently than if we were looking back here. We also have the option to turn on weighted averages, which frankly most people don't use, but if you want to, you have that option. You could put a heavier emphasis on one period of time versus another period of time. So that's called the velocity calculation, and the default setting is just averaging out everything. The next option you have is manual velocity. So let's say you're launching a new product, or your product's been out of stock for a long period of time, more than we can sort of compensate for. We do have a stockout tool, which I'll show you later. But if you've been out of stock for several months, or it's a brand new product and there's no Amazon data for us to calculate, you could just punch in a manual velocity. I predict this product is going to sell 12 units a day, and if I save that, then it will go ahead and predict 12 units a day indefinitely until I either switch back to my velocity calculation after I have some sales to look at, or until I manually change that number. So that's the second option. And the third option is my favorite. If you have a full year of sales data from Amazon Seller Central, then what SoStocked will do is it'll actually look at the last 365 days, and this is actually what this product sold last year, and it will duplicate that for this year's forecast. It's probably easier to look at this monthly. This is a small number because it's only calculating part of the month, but last year we sold that many in July, and obviously the sales go down in August, etc., etc. You can see that it does a lot more in the winter. Once you've chosen your methodology of calculating your baseline velocity and forecast, you can scroll down and save it to this product only, or you can save it to all products, all filtered products. Let's say we were looking at just one marketplace or some of those filters I mentioned before. All products from this supplier, this brand, this marketplace, actually we can just, that's its own little save, or you can actually do product tags, which we'll talk about later. So you don't have to do this 100 times if you have 100 SKUs. You can do it once, or you can do it a few times based on your groupings. In this case, we're just going to use the default setting to keep it simple, where we're averaging out the last 180 days. Now that we have our baseline velocity calculation and forecast, we're going to click into the product and open up some advanced forecasting tools. Let's go look at the calculation variables, which is this box here. Frankly, this is about 90 to 95% of all of your forecasting is based on what you put into this box. So it's very important that you pay attention and you set this up correctly, or your forecast won't make sense, your recommendations won't make sense, and you'll think that the system doesn't work, but actually you just didn't tell the system what to do. So first you see our order schedule and transfer schedule. This is all based on your lead time, what we talked about in the last video. If your lead time is going to a third-party warehouse, you're going to have to set up an order schedule and a transfer schedule. Ordering means purchasing new inventory from a supplier, and transferring means moving existing inventory from a warehouse into FBA or its final destination. That's why you have both of them. If your lead time is just going direct to Amazon and it's not going to a warehouse, then you can skip the transfer schedule because that doesn't matter. It's irrelevant in this case. So the order schedule, you have a lot of different options here. How often do you like to place inventory orders? Or if it were an ideal situation, how often would you place inventory orders? The default setting is every month starting on the first of the month, but you can change that to every week, every certain number of days, custom days, every 6 months. You have a lot of different options here. No matter what you choose, you always want to give a day of the month or day of the week to repeat your ordering. In other words, if I say every 4 months, I have to give it a start date. If I start today on June 1st, then my next order is going to be 4 months from June 1st, which would be October 1st. So that's when I could expect my first recommendation to place a new inventory order from SoStocked. The other option is to do as needed, which opens up this min-max restocking option down here. As needed is very helpful for advanced sellers who want to keep minimum buffer stock and a maximum stock as well. Buffer stock is calculated in either days or units. I personally like FBA buffer stock in days because it's a dynamic number and it changes as my velocity changes. We have specific videos on buffer stock if that's confusing to you, but again, this is just a quick get started guide video. Same thing goes for the warehouse. I don't need to repeat myself. It's just using minimum and maximum numbers. We are working on launching an inventory management tool for Amazon's new account-wide max storage limits. So let's just ignore this for now. Again, you can save to any grouping of products, and let's move on. It's definitely a good idea to set a minimum order quantity and a minimum transfer quantity if you're transferring. That way, your order and transfer recommendations are always divisible by the numbers that you actually purchase from your supplier or transfer from your warehouse. And the same applies to units per carton. We already talked about the lead time in the previous video, but you can choose a different lead time here, or you can manipulate this lead time right here and again, save to this product or save to any grouping of products. Otherwise, it's going to use your default lead time that is set at a vendor level, as we explained in the last video. The express lead time is an advanced tool that I won't get too much into, but basically this gives you an option of having a backup secondary lead time that will get you in stock faster, in this case air freight. And what it'll do is if it predicts a stock out at any point in the future, it might use this express lead time to either bypass that recommended normal shipment or to split it so that some of it's coming by air and some of it's coming by your default lead time so that you don't run out of stock, or at least your stock out is as close to minimum as possible. Your transfer time is a default transfer time of 10 days, but you can change it to whatever you want. And this one is just number of days that it takes to get from your warehouse into Amazon. Okay, before I get into the advanced tools, I do want to cover the inventory timeline a little bit. Let's just take a look at what our current forecast is. Right now we have a ton of warehouse inventory and we have a lot of inventory at Amazon. So really there isn't a whole lot to do. This number up here is telling us what we currently have at FBA. This is telling us that we have a current work order or transfer order that's coming into FBA any day now, and it's just waiting to check in. This is our daily velocity from Amazon, and as you can see, we're averaging about 30.6 units per day, and as those sales go down, you'll see it's deducting from our FBA inventory. When SoStocked predicts that you need more inventory transferred from your warehouse, you'll see a transfer button like this. And if you click on it, it will tell you forecasted transfer with an expected ETA, or estimated arrival time. If you don't understand why it's recommending this, go look at your calculation variables, because this number is 100% based on what you told the system you want. In this case, we want to transfer every week on Thursdays to hit this criteria. So July 15th will be a Thursday, and that 500 units will get us stocked up to 90 days. If we scroll down, we can see when that 500 units checks into Amazon, and we can see our next recommended transfer. That is how the inventory timeline works. Anytime you make a change here, it's going to recalculate your entire inventory timeline for about a full year into the future and going back in time. So it's recalculating constantly. Every time inventory comes into Amazon, every time you transfer from a warehouse, anytime you create a new purchase order, all that stuff is being calculated constantly, which will ultimately affect your order and transfer recommendation numbers. Okay, let's jump into some of the advanced tools here. We've got a trend tool, which will allow you, if you turn this on, to look at a period compared to an earlier period to see if you're going up or down in your sales trends. An obvious example of this would be year to date. This year, from January 1st to today, compared to last year for the same period of time, we've actually sold 14% more. So if I were using last year's sales, as I showed you about earlier, I could add this 14% either to this one product, to all products, or any grouping of products, and it will add that uptrend across the board to my inventory timeline and my forecast. The sales spikes tool is something we can turn on, but the default setting is off. Basically, that will remove any giant spikes in sales from your forecast so that we're only looking at realistic daily average sales. The deep discounts will look in the past at any time you lowered your price more than 30% and remove those sales from your forecast. The stockout tool is very important, and it's always turned on unless you turn it off. The stockout tool is going to find any day where your inventory went to zero. Or if it's a high velocity product like this one is, selling more than 10 units a day, any day that your sales dropped by more than 70%. And if that happens, we'll consider that a partial stockout. We will remove that from your forecast and instead give an average of what you would have sold if you were in stock. After stockouts, we have a tool here called Include MCF Sales. MCF stands for Multi-Channel Fulfillment. That basically means anything you're selling on another platform but still fulfilling by Amazon, like if you had a Shopify site with an FBA plugin. So all of those sales will be recorded here. This is just an average of what we already talked about. The additional sales growth tool is pretty awesome. You can just type in a percentage that you expect to grow by and add that to your timeline. You can also add that to all products or any grouping. The last two tools I want to talk about are the future lightning deals and future seasonal sales spikes. So unlike other forecasting tools, we give you the option to actually pre-plan increases in your sales velocity. For example, let's say this was Father's Day and we are going to sell an additional 500 units, we expect. We could pre-program that, and you could add as many of these as you want. We just call it lightning deals because mostly Amazon sellers are using this, and that's a common terminology. But really, this is any sale, number of units for any period of time. And the seasonal spikes tool is similar, only this one works in percentages. So you use a date range, you give it a name, and what increase in percentage do you expect? You just type that in and save it. You can also do a negative percentage if you know that your sales go down at a particular time of the year. And you can add as many of those as you want as well. That's about it for the forecasting here. Again, we want to keep it simple. You're all going to have your own individual ways that you do things, and there's no way I can cover all of that on one quick video. The last thing I'll mention is some of our dashboards that we've created up here. You can customize any dashboard. For example, what do I need to transfer from my warehouses in the next 30 days? It's basically just filtering transfers here, and you can group by warehouse instead of by supplier and create one work order or transfer order for everything recommended per warehouse. We do have videos on how to customize and create new dashboards, but essentially it's a combination of filters, grouping, and so forth, and then you just come up here to this and create a new dashboard by clicking Add as a new dashboard, give it a name, and save it as a favorite. It'll make a button up here, or just hit the green save and it will save in our long list of pre-made dashboards. So go ahead and set up your products, do your calculation variables, save it by your groupings, and then from that point forward you should be able to trust the recommendations given by SoStocked, and if you have any problems, let us know.